All right, everyone, we've got our last section of Competency 7. So let's take a look at TELPAS, our STAAR participation and linguistic accommodations, also noted as designated supports, and our LPAC and ARD collaboration. All right, so TELPAS. Keep in mind, the Texas English Language Proficiency Assessment System, or TELPAS, is our yearly measurement of the annual progress our ELLs are making in their language proficiency. Now keep in mind that TELPAS actually meets that federal standard of annually reviewing that progress. It's going to cover the domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And note that even, again, our parent denials do take TELPAS because they are ELLs. So our denials do take TELPAS. Okay. Now, as we report that progress, we're going to note that along the continuum of beginner, intermediate, advanced, advanced, high. Those are our 4 domains. Now, I will highly encourage you, as you can see in your resources there in Competency 7, we have the full verbiage of the proficiency level descriptors, or PLDs, that we use for TELPAS, and that's part of your resources there. I highly encourage you to take some time to read through those proficiency level descriptors, and the reason being is that on this assessment, they may mention a beginning level student. And if what you have in your mind as beginning level is different than, what's actually on the proficiency level descriptors, then that will skew your answer. And then also, of course, in our implementation side in the classroom, it's really important that we understand those proficiency levels so that we can help to move students up appropriately, and we can help to target instruction and scaffolding appropriate to those levels. Now, we do have some changes coming here. In the 2017-18 school year, TELPAS will be changing for our grades 2 through 12. Currently, grades K and 1 are staying the same. We grade those 4 language domains, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, holistically, using the proficiency level descriptors. And so the teachers, just based on those classroom observations and interactions with students, they measure that according to the proficiency level descriptors and holistically rate their students in the 4 language domains. However, this year in 2 through 12, we do have a change. They're going to still be taking that multiple choice reading test, the computer-based test, and then we will also still be holistically rating writing. We're still going to be collecting those writing samples, and teachers will be, certified raters in order to holistically rate the writing samples using the proficiency level descriptors. However, starting in this coming school year, 2017-18, the listening and speaking assessments will actually be embedded in that computer-based assessment along with reading. I think this is good for 2 reasons. 1, it lightens the load for teachers, which that's really great. And then number 2, although I'm sure there'll be some kinks to work out throughout the process, the good thing is it really helps to make those ratings much more objective than the subjective use of the proficiency level descriptor. So I think it's going to be a really positive change as we move in that direction with TELPAS, listening and speaking portions being on that computer-based assessment. So again, with writing, we're still rating those holistically using the PLDs, and so we're going to collect those writing samples. What's so important for the classroom teacher to remember is that as we administer those TELPAS samples in our classroom, they should really be organic to our classroom assignments and activities, grounded in the TEKS and the ELPs, something that the whole class is participating in a very common practice. Again, aligned to what we're currently going through, in our courses. Again, we're utilizing the PLDs to rate those holistically. We have to gain that 1 narrative about a past event, and then at least 2 of those expository texts from the content areas. This just notes the different reading clusters of the multiple choice test, and I think it's important to see as well that it's designed around those stages of second language acquisition, whereas our language arts and reading tests are designed around grade level reading expectations. All right, so take a moment just to pause and think about, your role as a teacher in the TELPAS process, and what might be important for you to remember as you administer and participate as a teacher with TELPAS. So take a minute to pause and think about and note that. All right, so let's go on to talking about STAAR. So as we noted in the 2016-17 school year, STAAR L and STAAR A are no longer available. So typically for our ELLs, in the past we'd had the STAAR L linguistically accommodated test to provide to our students who'd been in the country 3 years or less, etc. And with those criteria. But now the eligibility for receiving some of those similar supports has now broadened. STAAR encompasses our STAAR exam, which can be administered through paper or online, STAAR Spanish, and then STAAR ALT 2. That is all of this what STAAR has now available. Keep in mind, STAAR ALT 2 is only available to those students who qualify with disability-related needs. Just because a student is an ELL does not qualify them for STAAR ALT 2. They would have to be qualified as ELLs and have those specific disabilities needs through their identification with special education in order to participate with STAAR ALT 2. So those accommodation decisions. So once as an LPAC, it's important that we make the decisions on their participation. Are they going to take STAAR Spanish? Are they going to take STAAR, which goes up through, 3rd through 5th grade? And when we determine whether they're going to take STAAR Spanish, we're going to think about, is it the most appropriate measure of their academic progress, okay, in determining STAAR Spanish? Or are they going to best be served through STAAR? Would paper-based be best, or would the online version be best? Keeping in mind that some of our new designated supports are only available online. Now, the accommodations available for all students can be grouped into 3 different areas. Accessibility features, those are things that all students can have. And one thing to note that we saw here in 2016-17 school year was that bilingual dictionaries on our assessments, bilingual dictionaries for math, science, and social studies. Again, bilingual dictionary usage for math, science, and social studies are now part of the accessibility features. Any student can have those without any kind of designated support documentation. But then our designated supports, the appropriate team would have to assign those. And, all but 3 of those from our last school year were able to be designated by the LPAC without coordinating with any other campus team. And then we do have some designated supports that require TA approval. And of course, these are going to be a little bit more extensive. And so note, when we make accommodation decisions as an LPAC, it's very important that we base them on second language acquisition need and not any other outside factors. Oh, well, little Johnny is just, poor test taker, so he's really gonna need extra time. It has to be based on that second language acquisition need. Also, we have to make individual decisions. This is so, so important that we don't make blanket decisions, on participation or on accommodations. So, we're not going to say things like all of 3rd grade is going to take, bilingual program is going to take STAAR Spanish, or all of, our ELLs in 7th grade are going to get extra time. We do not want to make those blanket decisions. It's so important that we make individual decisions. And then also, what is routinely used in the classroom in instruction and in assessment? So important that students have familiarity with the accommodations they're going to receive on the test. It can be harmful for a student to receive something on the test that they don't normally utilize in instruction. Okay, and it is important that we make these decisions as close to the time of testing as possible and with the input of our teachers. Okay, so I really want you to, again, think about, you can take a moment to pause and jot down a note, think about what's my input, what's my role as the teacher in ensuring that my students participate in the appropriate STAAR assessment and receive the appropriate accommodations. So take a minute to think about it. All right. So now let's finish up this section talking about the ARD and LPAC. So again, ARD is that Admission, Review, and Dismissal Committee for our special education programs. And I've already been talking about a few of these differences in our previous videos in Competency 7. But again, the LPAC can talk about multiple children in the meeting, whereas in an ARD, they're only talking about one child at a time. In an LPAC, we only need that parent representative. That's why they sign that oath of confidentiality, because they're hearing information about other students that are not their own. Whereas in an ARD, we can only talk about that one student and with that student's parent. Again, parent permission is different as well. For our LPACs, we just, if we see any home language survey that has anything other than English, we can have that permission to test. Do our appropriate identification testing. Whereas for special education testing, we would need that parent permission. And also that process on the ARD side, that process for identification can be initiated by a parent. For our LPACs, we only have those 20 school days to identify and place our students in the appropriate bilingual or ESL program with parent permission. Whereas in the ARD, they have 45 school days for that initial evaluation, and then an additional 30 calendar days for determining that eligibility with the ARD and, as appropriate, implementing an IEP and placing them in an appropriate service program. Okay, and an IEP, as noted here, is that individualized education plan for our special education students. So keep in mind, again, we're talking about our kiddos who are ELLs who also are identified as special needs and are going to receive that appropriate special education. It's important to see that our students can be served with both programs, but not to think that just because our ELLs, are identified as having language needs, that they're automatically needing special education. That is not the case. So it's a fine line of determining where those designations lie. But it's really important that we work together. The ARD and the LPAC need to work together to determine the appropriate assessments for entry, for exit, and for state assessment. If a student is duly identified as an ELL and a special education student, again, that ARD and LPAC are going to work together on how are we going to appropriately assess their entry in the programs, the exit of the programs, and then also their participation in STAAR. It's important we work together, okay? So anything related to those things, the ARD and LPAC work together. As you can see, the ARD, they need the LPAC to identify the language barriers, and the LPAC needs the ARD in order to help understand better the disability barriers that the student might have. And again, what do we work on together as the ARD and LPAC? We're going to determine that appropriate participation for assessments, for entry, for exit, for state assessments. We're going to design that appropriate instruction, again, working together to note support on both the language side and the disability side. To provide the appropriate formative assessments and progress monitoring, meeting those IEP goals on the ARD side, and then meeting the language progress standards on the LPAC side, determining how instruction should be provided with the support of both programs, and then measuring how effective that instruction is on that annual basis, at least measuring those annual goals. Okay. All right, so that has brought us to the end of Competency 7. You have done it. If you've been following us in sequence in this course, you are now at the end of our course. So thank you so much for your time and attention to these competencies. Good luck, and we look forward to hearing from you when you pass that exam. So God bless.